Good evening, everybody. Nice to see you this evening. Thank you for joining us. This is a Microsoft Teams live event. My name's Mr. Cornish, and I'm going to be with you this evening, and we're going to take you through our arrangements for September. I have got Mr. McDonald, who is helping us with the presentation. So, Mr. McDonald, I wonder if you might be able just to pause the slideshow that we've got on the moment, and if I might just be able to just have the camera up on my screen, or is that what is going out? That is probably what's going out. That's fantastic. So just want to say welcome to those of you that are joining us tonight, which is probably about half an hour, 35 minutes to go through the arrangements that we've got in place for welcoming children for September. It's obviously been such a unique and strange time for all of us. So it's about making sure that you're aware of what it is that we're asking of you, what we're doing for your children and for our community, to make sure that everybody is as safe as possible as we return. In a moment, I'm going to flick over into a different set of slides and then talk to those really to flesh out some of the details that I put in through the letter earlier on. And as you can see in the slide that we've had earlier, questions can be submitted through the chat function, and I've got two moderators, two colleagues from my senior team who will be moderating those throughout the evening, and we will respond to those and then post those in the chat function as we go through. And if there are common questions, then we'll compile a frequently asked questions sheet for you so that you can have all of your questions asked and answered. I'd like to say at this point just a huge thank you for how you supported the school during the COVID lockdown. It's been such a challenging time for us and for you as our community. Really, it has been completely unprecedented, but the way that you have supported us has been fantastic, and I've been really bowled over really by the messages of support that we've received. I'm really looking forward to coming back in September. We've got a number of new staff joining the school, and as I committed to doing when I took over as principal, we're absolutely still 100% committed to making sure that All Saints is the absolute very best that it can be. So with that in mind, I'm going to click over into what our measures are for September. So Mr. McDonald is, you can't see him, but he's going to be keeping me on track in the background. I'm going to share some slides here. Okay, so hopefully, Mr. McDonald, you can see that slide PowerPoint coming through there. That's great. I wonder, yeah, fantastic. So yeah, that's brilliant. So I think we've got that coming through. And if we have any technical problems, again, please put them into the chat, and we will pick that up. So I'm not going to read through every single one of these slides in detail, because I will make this available for you as a presentation afterwards. But again, as I did with staff last week, I'm going to take you through a set of key information. So anything in this presentation that has a red header, that's a measure that we're taking as All Saints School. Anything that has a blue header is a measure that the Department for Education has asked us to respond to. So I've tried to include a little bit of both so that you can understand what it is the Department for Education is asking of schools, and then how we are responding to that in school. Okay, and I think between those two things you will then have a clear sense of why we have put the measures in place that we have. So the first one really to share with you is our timetable. That is going to be different next year compared to how it has been in the past, ever so slightly, for years 7 and 8 in particular. There's going to be a small stagger at the start of the day for years 7 and 8. We're going to start their lessons at 8:35, and then we're going to finish their lessons at 2:55. And although it's not a huge stagger, that will just help us actually stagger the students on the way into school and the way out of school. Every other year group, so that's years 9, year 10 and 11, they will start at the normal time of 8:40 and finish at 3 p.m. For the eagle-eyed among you, you'll notice that we've got slightly shorter period 1 and period 2. They are 50 minutes each long now rather than an hour. And what that does is that actually means that we can back up against lunchtime an extra period of tutor. And I'll talk the reasons through why we've done that later on as we go through. But what I'm going to do now is move into some of the guidance that we have needed to respond to. The DFE has been very clear that it is their plan for all students to come back full time from the beginning of September. It's important that students do that for their well-being, because time out of school, as we know, is detrimental for their cognitive and academic development, particularly for disadvantaged children. And the risks, fortunately, to children becoming ill themselves is actually very low. There are more negative impacts of being out of school, so the balance of the balance of evidence is for children to return to school. In terms of the public health advice that means for us, that does mean that any children who are ill must stay at home. We will be having in school very robust hand hygiene and respiratory hygiene. That means that we're going to be displaying the catch it, bin it, kill it posters around the site, and we're also going to be making sure that children wash their hands frequently and also sanitize regularly with alcohol hand gel. We have got enhanced cleaning arrangements. We've increased our cleaning capacity on site. We have a cleaner on site all day, every day now. And then we have also increased the supplies that go into classrooms, into the specialist rooms that I'll talk to later, to make sure that we're cleaning as we go throughout the day. We will have to engage with NHS Test and Trace, and we also have to formally consider how we can reduce the contacts and maximise distances between children and between year groups in particular. The DFE have asked us to do that in four main ways. That's through grouping children together, through arranging contact, through avoiding contact between groups, arranging classrooms with forward-facing desks, and staff maintaining a distance wherever possible from the students. Again, we've worked through carefully a whole range of measures that the Department for Education have asked us to do, and that is really with the intention of delivering still a broad and balanced curriculum. The last thing that we want to do is to have children sat all day, every day in the same room, day in, day out, because we don't think that that's right. That's not what the DFE are asking schools to do. It is about putting in place appropriate measures to make sure that we can do that carefully, but still have specialist teaching. Lots of you who perhaps have got children in younger year groups with children in years reception through to year 6, you'll be familiar with the term bubbles. At secondary school, these are allowed to be larger, so it can be the full size of a year group. So that is where we need to be as a secondary school. Every year group will be their own bubble in effect. That means that they can have the full range of the curriculum. And as the guidance says there, it's clear that this is not an all or nothing approach. Sometimes children, we know, will find it difficult to distance. We know that sometimes there might be occasions where different year groups will pass each other in a corridor, or will move into one room after another that's a specialist room. That's allowed within the guidance, and it is, as I've highlighted there in yellow for you, it's very clear that even if we separate and distance for as much of the time as possible, and group wherever possible, it will still bring a benefit. Okay, and the reason for that is it means that we can mix into wider groups for specialist teaching, which I think is really, really powerful. So we've been able to again follow the guidance here, which is that all staff will be able to teach to all year groups, to make sure that we can teach the full curriculum, as I've said there, with staff maintaining a distance. The way that we're going to do that at All Saints is by having year groups into different zones of the school. So year 11 will be into humanities and ICT, year 10 will be in MFL and RE, year 9 will be in science, year 8 in the maths and the mobiles, they're our largest year group, and then year 7 will be welcomed into the English zone. And I'm going to show you that on the map. I recognise it might be a little bit too small for your screens this evening, but the principle is there. You can see how that distances out each of the year groups. It just so happens that with our layout, most of our specialist rooms, so the technology rooms, the music room, the gym, the media studies room, our art rooms, and one of our science labs are under that green square. So that means we have got a natural divide on our site where we can use the 4 points of the compass, north, east, south and west, and our specialist areas to run a safe site. That's the upstairs view. Students will understand what that means when we show them. This is IT upstairs. This is humanities. Again, these are our art rooms upstairs here. Now that is going to have an impact on how we ask children to move around the building. The movement will need to be different. That will need to be more controlled. We will be asking children to keep left in corridors a little bit more clearly than perhaps we have done in the past. And I've fleshed out on the next couple of slides for you a couple of examples of how children should move. I can't in one evening necessarily cover off every single movement that students would need to make, but I hope that this helps you understand the principles. So if we had a year 7 student moving from their zone, from the English zone here to the PE changing rooms, normally they would probably move along the corridor and then down the entrances to the gym here. But rather than doing that, we want students to move externally through outside routes wherever possible to then join at the changing rooms here. Okay, so rather than moving internally, we're going to use external routes. Year 8, another example for year 8 moving from maths to technology. This is an example where they need to cross through another zone. It's the most direct route, but actually rather than going all the way around and spending a long time out of class, we would want students to move out through the courtyard, straight through the cross, which in effect is a neutral zone, and then straight into design and technology. And when we return in September, we will take children through in their year groups what their routes should be. Okay, we know that one of the great advantages of the secondary curriculum is specialist teaching. We need specialist rooms to be able to be used, and those are our specialist rooms there. So tech, food tech, drama, the library, tech and IT, music, those are our specialist rooms. They will be cleaned every lesson after every group have been through them by the teacher, and an enhanced daily clean by our cleaning team as well. And wherever possible, students should use external routes, neutral routes, especially if the weather is good. If the weather does, when the weather does turn, as it inevitably will later on, we will talk to them about using the shortest possible route and also making sure that they stay in as far as possible a neutral zone. But it is okay for them to be moving if they need to, as they will have to do in the wet in the winter. We don't want to be asking students to walk for a long time around the outside of the building. Okay, so I'm just going to talk to a little bit now about measures within the classroom, because that's the biggest measure really is the zoning of the school into different spaces and how we divide that up. In the classroom, we are still looking to maintain a distance for teachers. So wherever possible, staff will stay away from students. We're going to ask staff to work at a 2-metre distance, and that is going to feel strange to us as teachers because we often work at very close quarters with children. We often support them very directly, sometimes modelling a piece of work in their book, ticking books as we go through. The guidance is very clear. That really can't happen in the first instance in September. So I do need to make you aware of that desks will be sat facing forwards. Unfortunately, we won't be able to have quite as much group work where we're face to face with children as we would normally do. And I need to just make you and students aware of that. They will be a bit different. Teachers will stay at the front of the room. And I think one of the advantages that will come with that will be that we will be able to maximise teacher input time. The reality is that COVID has had a real impact on all of us, really. So the thing that we want to try and make sure happens is that if we're back, if we've got children in front of us, we want to maximise absolutely every second that we can in every lesson. Every minute matters, every mark counts. To help every pupil move forward. Staff will therefore be using more direct instruction methods so that we're having that input and maximising teacher time as we go through. Outside of the classroom, there are some other measures that then the Department for Education have asked us to put in place here. They are on your screen there. So groups should be kept apart. So year 11s should be separate from year 10, separate from year 7. But we can still have, I'm really pleased to say, assemblies. For us, we can still have collective worships. It just means that we cannot have those with more than one year group. Obviously one of our central vision statements is to build community, but we're going to be doing that as sort of little sub communities for a part in September. We will have year 7 worships and year 7 assemblies and year 8 and year 9 and year 10, but we will do those as individual year groups. We will also, as you can see there, need to allocate separate outside spaces for each year group, so that we're not having children from different year groups working, playing at break time in different places. And we've also set out in my letter details of how the canteen and the hall will work for servings at break and lunch. So in terms of how we've addressed that, so we're assemblies, they will only involve a single year group. Breaks and lunches will be staggered. That means we will only ever have 2.5 year groups on at one time, and we think that's going to be a really positive thing to help make sure that the behaviour is nice and calm at break and lunch. Children can get served quickly in the canteen. I think probably they will quite like that, because the queues will be that much shorter, because demand will be less. And breaks will be blocked against collective worship, and lunch will be blocked against tutor. Again, with the extended tutor period that we'll have blocked against lunch, we will be able to do lots of the support of young people that sometimes in our normal tutor time is quite tight. We're trying to go through a collective worship and all the notices, checking the diary, and also doing support work as well. So having a little bit of extra capacity in our system now, I think, will be good. In order for that to work well, breaks will be 20 minutes, lunch will be half an hour. And as I've said there, 1 year group will use the canteen, 1 year group and half of year 9 will use the hall at any one time. The hall will be divided very clearly into 2 sections with 2 servings. For wet break and for wet lunch, I've allocated in the letter the rooms that children will use. And in the first instance, and this won't be forever, but in the first instance, just whilst we're getting the systems up and going, we will have grab and go healthy snacks, hot food, will be pasta pots, baguettes, hot wraps, to make sure that we can do a quick turnover and avoid the queues. We will clean the keypads down after every session so that they're clean and ready for the next sitting, and we'll make sure that the outside spaces are again are very clearly demarcated. I've already spoken about the start and the end of the day 5-minute stagger for year 7 and 8. At the end of the day, we will have our period 5 teaching team making sure that students leave the site promptly, and that's really because we have to do that. We have to make sure that they're travelling home in their bubbles as far as possible. I've said that in the letter. If you can help us by talking with your children about walking in or cycling in with children from within their year group, that is really going to help us. That means that then we know that as they're coming to and from us, they are wherever possible with students in their bubble. Just also want to reassure you, if you've got a child who has special educational needs or disability, we are aiming to maintain as normal a level of support as normal for your children. That is going to be challenging because the guidance sort of says, well, staff keep a distance, but then also send children as normal. So there's a little bit of thinking that we're doing there to make sure that we can have TAs and teaching assistants and the hub working as normally as possible and as safely as possible for everybody. If we will have our new Senko, Mrs. Julie Jeans. She will be contacting some of you and some of your children prior to September to make sure that they're ready for the reintegration. And I know lots of staff have commented on how pleased they've been able to keep in touch with you over the last few months, and to reassure and reduce anxieties. So wherever possible, we'll maintain SEND support in class. We will use seating plans to distance TAs and send students, but sensitively, of course. And we will set both rooms up in our hub, in our SEND base, so that we've got increased capacity up there for children to be up there for specific catch-up programs. Move into some key bits around school operations that have come from the Department for Education. Transport is a key one for us, so wherever possible, the DFE are asking us to encourage you to ask your children to walk, to cycle, or to scoot into school when it's safe to do so. To drive, you are welcome to do that as well. We have to be realistic, though. We do have lots of our children coming in on public transport, and as I've said in my letter, it's important that if children do need to use public transport, they must wear a face mask at this time. If you are able to follow one of those measures at the top there, walk, cycle, scoot, that's brilliant. Just again, in terms of a safe site, your support around making sure that there's no cars on site, that's going to be important for us in the new year, as always. And please be assured, I have worked with the local transport providers to ask them to provide increased capacity on the buses that go through from Weymouth Town through Wyke and then to Portland and then return as well. I will be pushing on with that, and I will update you as soon as I have more information. Just going to touch on attendance. You will have seen, I'm sure, in the press all the stories about, you know, schools can now issue fines, and that's never been our first approach. Our approach is always to support and to work with you to help understand what the reasons are for attendance if we have concerns and if you have concerns. But there's been lots of stories, I think unhelpful stories in the press around, well, you know, we've had lockdown and now we're going straight back to XYZ. That's not going to be the case. We will continue to follow the advice, but we will always support wherever possible. So that's our GP project. I know lots of you are involved in that, and thank you if you've done that with attendance letters and panels. We will support you with every step of the way, and I'm really pleased to let you know that we've appointed a new family liaison officer, Mrs. Parr, to support the work of the attendance team. Just one final slide. I haven't put it in as a slide for every one of those points, but some other key points there. If you're visiting the site, we will have a new sign-in arrangement as we go through. We've got an app that we're trialing, so hopefully you'll be able to sign in actually on your own phone, and then our system will pick that up by using a QR code scanner. That will mean that then there's no need for you to touch the pad or to touch a pen. So we're eliminating touch points and making sign-in super quick. We've got a number of new trainees and NQT starting in September, and again, I think that's fantastic. That keeps us fresh as experienced teachers, having that next generation coming through. I've spoken about catering. Estates, we're always fully compliant with ambitions. Educational visits, obviously we want to get the extracurricular programme up and running as soon as possible, but we're probably not going to see very many, if any, of those in term 1 or 2, and there are some others that are under review as we go forward. Everybody will be expected to be back in uniform in September, and I've communicated around that already. We're giving ties and badges to those of you with children already at the school. Those of you that would normally buy ties, that's New Year 6s or Year 10s into 11s. You will still need to purchase that, but we will keep up with all of the uniform arrangements through communications. If students turn up on day one without a tie and get a tie on day one, that's okay. We can work that through with you, okay. And with extracurricular provision, so if that's a sport or a club, we want that to happen as soon as possible. That won't happen in the first couple of weeks, but it will then happen, and we'll risk assess that. Just to make you very, very clearly aware of that, we had switched our fire assembly drill onto the tennis courts to avoid the mud in winter, but actually the field is a better place for social distancing, so we will use the sports field for the fire assembly point. We will review it, and if we need to switch that, then we can look to do that so that we're not traipsing mud through shoes and carpets and all sorts there. I'm just going to address now what the department has told us about curriculum, behaviour and pastoral support. And absolutely, we're still committed, as I know all other local schools are, to teaching a broad and ambitious curriculum. The second bullet point there is quite interesting. The DFE is saying that schools should be expecting to return to normal by the summer term of 2021. So that just gives you a bit of an insight into how much catch-up work we will need to do, how much your support is going to be valued as we go through working with children to make sure that we're getting them back onto the right footing for where they need to be. And that's not going to be an immediate thing, but we are working on that. We're going to be absolutely as ever planning on the basis of the needs of all pupils, and we are going to be developing remote education even further so it's integrated into the school curriculum, and I'll touch on that in a moment. I'd just like to talk to parents who are with us of Year 10 children. Obviously, your children are moving into Year 11 next year. There is an off-call consultation. If you'd like to respond to that as parents, you're more than welcome to do that. I have put in a formal response as a school. I'm asking the DFE to go further, to make further changes to the exam specifications, given the amount of time that children have missed. But I think the vast majority of children in Year 10 and 11 will be able to progress to their examinations. That will support them towards their preferred route as they go through. Just a couple of curriculum adjustments that we've made for specific subjects. Music has a specific set of arrangements in it, as does PE. Students will be allowed to wear their PE kit on the days that they have PE. That will be to reduce pressure on the changing rooms and improve punctuality to lessons. If you wish, you're more than welcome to send your children in with a spare shirt, so that when they've had their football or their netball, if they do then want to go into the changing rooms, a quick change of shirt, then they've got something fresh to wear for the rest of the day, and not in a shirt that they've had on for the last hour. But I hope you find that supportive. That will help, I hope, as well with the washing of uniform at home. Just gives you an extra kind of day in which to get that done on those off days. But we don't want to put more of a block than we need to on that pressure around changing rooms. So when children have got PE, more than happy for them to come in their school-based PE kit. So they're looking smart, they're looking part of the community, but also that they're good to go for PE. In terms of music, there's some very specific guidance around that. More than 15 students are not allowed. It's 15 at any one time for music. So we will be having extra staffing and extra rooming, with half of each music group at any one time doing a practical part of music, a practical music lesson, and then the other half of the group doing that the following week. And we have made some changes as well to our assessment protocol. Obviously, where we're trying to minimise the number of books going home and the touch points that we're trying to minimise all the time, we are going to put in a new assessment protocol. It's something that's been trialled and stood the absolute test of scrutiny and quality QA with Mrs. Roberts in humanities, geography. It's a system that we're rolling out across the school. We're going to use a treasury tag hole punch system in exercise books, and we will be asking children to complete assessments more regularly than we have done this year on paper, and also using Microsoft Teams, using the turn-in function. And the reason for that is we are going to keep exercise books at school for the majority of the time. There may be some occasions when they come home, but for the majority of the time, they will be kept at school. We're going to have boxes with those books, so very clearly easy, simple storage system, so that materials can be stored in classes and in zones. And we're not going to use lockers whilst we're under COVID-19. And the reason for that is our lockers are all over the school, and it would mean that children will be crossing zones regularly throughout the day to access their locker. Where we've also making the sort of adjustment to let children wear their PE kit on the PE days, they won't necessarily need to carry the PE kit if they have got their kit on. So we hope that the need for lockers will absolutely be reduced. Children will need to carry a bag with them. That's absolutely fine. They can still carry a bag with them, but lockers will need to be out of action until further notice. We will make sure for existing pupils that students have got a good chance to clear out their locker, because I know we had to close at such a rapid pace in the spring term, and we will be making sure that they're all cleared out. And as I've said before, one of the fantastic things that students have been doing with me this year is saying, "Come on, Mr. Cornish, we want to see some new and improved lockers, and I want to commit to getting that done with you and with your children this year. One way or another, we will fully and finally resolve the bags and locker issue at All Saints." But I hope you find that's a sensible and safe position in terms of books and lockers. In terms of lesson changeovers, I've said to my staff that their lessons must be well planned. There needs to be a time allocated for changeover. I would be very grateful if you can ask your children to have a reading book with them all of the time. That would mean that then if there is a time when we need to do a changeover of staff from one side of the building to the next, then students can always be reading. Really good evidence that reading and literacy rates is always that, plus attendance. They're the two key factors in determining children's GCSE outcomes. So your support in making sure that children have got something around a reading book is going to be really, really helpful. Sometimes students will move within their zone. So if they're moving from an English lesson to a maths lesson, where they're moving to a different group, they would be able to do that within their teaching zone. They won't need to leave their zone for that. And I'm trying to work with staff to make sure that we're avoiding those lengthy lineups where we're getting in, we're getting them in, we're getting on with it, and we're getting on with them. And I think that's a really sensible way forward. The DFE does make note and reference in its guidance to student behaviour, and I don't say this lightly, but we do recognise that the routines at home are different to those in school. You know, I've been at home myself for a lot of lockdown, working from home and only visiting site when absolutely needed. But certainly homeschooling my own two has given me a new found respect for their teachers, because juggling that plus work has been challenging, as I'm sure it has been for some of you. So we want to absolutely work with every child who is struggling to get back into school. So we are going to update our COVID-19 behaviour appendix. That'll be shared with you in September, early in September. You may well have heard about the Dorset reorganisation of services. This is called the Blueprint for Change. From Dorset, after the Dorset and the BCP move, the Dorset and BCP restructure. I'm really pleased that actually Chesil, our area of Dorset, has been given a far increased allocation in terms of social workers, early help for families and SEND services, and lots of those services are now going to be free at the point of delivery for schools. In the past, they've been paid for services that have really made it very difficult sometimes to access them. So I am working very closely with the local authority to make sure that our children, your children, our students will have the absolute very best support services available to them if we need that. That's a reorganisation. It's a massive reorganisation across Dorset. It's not finished, but it is heading absolutely, I firmly believe, in the right direction. And I want to just to reassure you that Ambitions, All Saints, myself, we will continue to be fully inclusive practitioners who put children at the heart of everything that we do. I know that when I started, lots of you were talking to me about some things that perhaps were not quite working the way you wanted them to work. I know we're not quite there yet. I would never say absolutely we are not there yet, and we will continue to improve. But you can be assured that my senior team and I, we are always looking to be inclusive with how we work with young people, and that means doing things differently for different children. Sometimes it will mean doing things just slightly differently, because everybody comes from a different place and everybody needs that individual support. So just a few more slides, really, just moving through. I do want to just talk for a few moments about contingency planning for outbreaks. Obviously, we've infection rates in Dorset, in the southwest, in Weymouth and Chesil, in BCP where I am, they are thankfully very low. They compare very well with the rest of the country, and so we have been very fortunate. Although I know many of you have been affected by COVID, I know many of you have had family members affected by COVID, and I don't say that lightly at all. But we are fortunate compared to some other areas of the country in that we have got very low infection rates at the moment. Obviously, we're talking about September, and we need to get through the summer break, and we need to continue to do everything that we can as in our power as local communities to slow the spread of the transmission. But we all do need to be aware that there may be a second wave. You know, we have to be realistic about that. There may be a second spike, especially in the winter. So the Department for Education and the government have asked us to prepare for that. And I do want to outline some of our plans for that with you now. If a local area sees a spike in infection rates, authorities will work with me. That will be Public Health England. The Department for Education would also work with myself and the Trust to make sure that we can make the right decision making. If we do have a case at school, it does not necessarily mean that we would immediately shut the school. It would mean that the year group of that child would go into a period of quarantine for a self-isolation for a period of time. But hopefully we would want to continue with other areas of the school. Our contingency plan. If the worst were to happen and we were closed down because there was a case of 2 or 3 cases, that would then become a cluster and then possibly an outbreak even. We would remain open for vulnerable children, for the children of critical workers, as we've done now, and we would continue to provide remote education for all pupils. I just want to say thank you to those of you who have supported us with our rollout of Microsoft Teams. as we've gone on through this, and we will continue to use that. Staff this time would work from site unless the national guidance changed. And the big change for that is that our remote offer would mirror our daily timetable. So rather than the weekly work setting email and the tasks coming in, we would run our normal timetable, but we would run it remotely. And the reason for that is that the DFE have said we expect schools to have the capacity to offer immediate remote education. Now, I'm very pleased to have said that over the last few weeks and months during lockdown, we have really pushed forward on this. We have now got a system in place that means we are able to offer remote education immediately. So please be reassured, Teams will be used in September 2020 as an integral part of our planning. It's not going to go away just because we're back in the building. I've directed staff to use that, to be skilled and prepared for that. We're going to use it to organise worksheets, resources, links to videos. It's going to be clear, because I know we had to set the remote system up at very short notice in the first instance. We're going to use it for classwork, assessments, and for homework. We're going to reduce the need for students to take their books home, and that turn-in function, that means children can send work into the teacher using Teams. Teachers can mark it online and they can give feedback directly on the work to the child. That will all continue. Okay, so in the event of a lockdown, and that might be because of a local lockdown that we are affected by, it could be a school closure because we have cases in staff or students, but Microsoft Teams would be our way forward. It doesn't necessarily mean immediate live lessons. Obviously, I know lots of you have had children taking part in that, and we will increasingly see live lessons as we go through for revision sessions or catch up videos, such as I've done this evening with you. We will continue to use those opportunities, and we'll continue to push forward in that. But it may mean that the work would be set with option for chat during that lesson. It could be that a teacher is doing as I'm doing tonight. It could be talking over a PowerPoint slide, setting a task and coming back and checking it. The aim would be really simply to have our normal timetable operating as we go through it. I've said there it could take the form of a live lesson, teachers talking over a PowerPoint, using a pre-recorded video with a task and an assignment turn in. Thank you so much for being with us. I can see through the chat that although we had a slightly slow start on the chat, it has got very, very busy on the chat, and I'm grateful to the questions that are coming in, and also to my team of moderators who are responding to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close the screen share. Hopefully you're back with me. I just want to say a huge thank you for every piece of support that you have given us during lockdown. We're going to leave the chat open. Mr. McDonald is going to revert in a moment to showing the original slide, but I would like to just say again, thank you so much. We do use the website. I hope you would agree more effectively than we have done in previous years. I hope you're following our Facebook feed and our Twitter feeds. Our Facebook feed is our main feed for where we celebrate students' work, for where we do informal push outs as well. So please, certainly when I check what's coming back on us through that, I really just want to say a huge thank you. You've been an absolutely fantastic set of parents to serve during lockdown. I'm really looking forward to continuing to work with you and your children next year, and I'm going to wish you all a fantastic summer break. Make sure you enjoy it safely. Please get a break. I think September is going to be busy, but thank you for being with us this evening. We will just leave the meeting open for a few moments in silence, and we'll just have a final few questions on the chat, and then we will make this available as a recording as well. But thank you so much. God bless you. My blessings and my prayers are with you. Your support is always greatly appreciated. Goodbye now.